It's chilly outside. Isn't it nice? Welcome to church this morning. It's great to see all of you. Welcome to those who are joining us on Zoom, maybe in your jammies. Who can blame you, really? And welcome especially to all of our guests and visitors. It's just really great to see you today. I hope you'll stay after church, have a cup of coffee, join in our various after-church celebrations, as you will hear soon, and let us get to know you just a little bit better. I have a few announcements before we get going. First, I'm so excited for tomorrow night. We have a new program, our community night. Potluck will start at 6 o'clock, and our gatherings start at 6:45. We have a great lineup for UUs of all ages, including a sing-along, tech tips, Brene Brown book club, knitting group, and a canning demonstration, which starts a little bit early, so you'll want to sign up for that one, as well as childcare and programs for children and youth. And there's still some room in my Soul Matters creativity class. Yeah, so please take a look at the website for the details, or you can talk to me, look at your Torch email. And the canning demonstration and the creativity workshop do require a sign up, so we can help you with that. If you're relatively new to First Unitarian Church and you want to learn more about the UU experience, what it's like to be a UU, and how to become a member, you can sign up for our new member class. This course is an introduction to our UU faith as a continuing journey. It will be held upstairs in the Haven, which is behind me up the stairs, and it will run for 3 consecutive weeks from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. Now, I had a lot of things going on last couple of weeks, which produced a lot of email, and the emails all started to run together, and, well, I committed a couple of unforced errors this week, shall we say, and did not announce this class with a lot of lead time for you. The class starts this week on Wednesday, and then we'll follow the next 2 Wednesdays. But our teachers work really hard to make the new member class a great experience. So if you're new and you want to take the class, please sign up. We have just 2 weeks till the auction. That means just 2 more weeks to listen to these great announcements about the auction. We would really love for you to buy your tickets. I understand that there's a QR code in the seat back in front of you. If you have not bought your tickets, you can do it right now while you're thinking about it, or you can do it at the auction table in Elliott Hall. We also want your protest pictures. Send them to us, to the auction team, and you can get those email addresses at the auction table. If you want to see Pete Buttigieg, now is your chance. You put your silent bid in at the auction table, and silent bidding for all of our options starts a week from today. So if you're thinking of making a donation of an item or an experience for our auction, now is the time. Finally, we have a couple of things happening right after this service today. We will be rededicating our plaza in honor of our Minister Emeritus, the Reverend Tom Goldsmith. So please join us for a short program in Elliott Hall. We will unveil the marker. There will be snacks. There will be drinks. It will be lovely. So please join us for that right after service, and or join us for the costume swap on the playground. Come and find your perfect costume, your kid's perfect costume. Everything is free, and there will be snacks and drinks while you browse. Now, if it were me, I would go get a costume, put it on, and wear it to the plaza rededication. That's just me. Anyway, with the announcements behind us, let us settle our minds. Take a breath. Locate ourselves in this space and prepare for worship. Our service begins with the lighting of the chalice. Let us bring our whole selves to worship today. Our bodies and all that they are capable of. Our minds and the best of our thinking. Our hearts and the full range of our emotions, and our intuition, trusting ourselves and each other. In this trust, we kindle this flame today. And now I invite you to rise in body or in spirit, and let's sing together number 315. It's a little new, but I promise it's easy to catch on to. 315.
I'm going to give you a minute to find it so that you can follow me playing it through once. So find it, stand, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with music, just read the top note. It looks more complicated than it is. I'll play it through once.
It's a new month, which means there is a new lay minister theme. Yay! October's lay ministry theme is choice, and I'm excited to welcome up Hana Harper, who will be the first lay minister to discuss choice. Hana.
Good morning. My grandpa Hada was a Japanese immigrant who in many ways lived the American dream. He sailed on a long and arduous boat ride to San Francisco in 1919, worked the fields by day, and went to school by night. He became a businessman and ran a thriving Los Angeles grocery store called Greater Central. But with a single government order during World War II, all of that was stripped away. He and his family, my family, were forced out of their home and sent to an internment camp in Arkansas for 3 years, simply because they were Japanese. I can't imagine what this must have felt like for these people who had done nothing wrong. Many lost their property, their dignity, and the simple comforts of home. As I grew up hearing this story, what struck me were the choices that he and my grandma made in response to this stimulus. They could have become bitter, withdrawn, blaming, and angry. Instead, they chose to rebuild and believe again in possibility. They chose not to let their circumstances define their spirit. There's this idea that between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space, we are free to choose. My grandparents, for example, chose in this space to practice letting go of blame and negativity. They chose to rebuild. Determinists, like Sam Harris, justifiably argue that our choices are the result of our upbringing and our environment, that we are determined by these things that surround us. If that's true, then my grandfather's resilience was inevitable, already programmed into him. But to me, that view feels disempowering, because if all of our actions are predetermined, how do we draw on hope for humanity? Where is the possibility for growth, for forgiveness, for transformation? I find hope in believing that in cherishing that space between stimulus and response. It offers us the ability to respond in ways that rise above our conditioning. It's in that space where our freedom lives. In Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl saw this in the darkest of places. Thousands entered the Nazi concentration camps, stripped of everything, including their very sense of self. But not all responded in the same way. Some became brutal, hoarding scraps. Others gave away their last piece of bread. Frankl wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." He believed that while our minds and our bodies are battered by external forces, there is something spiritual in us that cannot be stripped away. That's where choice lives. My mother lived this out in a quieter way. She came from a difficult childhood, one that could have shaped her into bitterness and blame. Instead, she used to tell me, "You can't choose your parents, but you can choose the parents of your children." That was her way of saying, you can't control where you come from, but you can choose what legacy you create. She gave my brothers and me a life better than the one that she knew, not because circumstances made it easy, but because she chose differently. Something about me is that I get great satisfaction from getting lots of tasks done in quick succession. I'll finish an email, throw in a load of laundry, prep lunch, and fold clothes before the timer goes off. However, this can lead to a missed opportunity, like overlooking an important moment with one of my children. I've realized that this concept of choice is a powerful spiritual practice. For me, it looks like pausing and breathing between tasks, checking in with the present moment, even just for 5 seconds. Because in that pause, something bigger than efficiency, like presence with a loved one, has a chance to show up. In that space, we all get to choose how we show up in the world. Thank you.
I was telling you earlier about my mountain of email and how things got away from me this week. Some weeks are just like that. We all have them. I feel like I have a tentative hold on things now, so if you need to email me, it's okay. Like, really, it's okay. But what I needed at that moment was to back away slowly from the computer and do something else. Get out of my head, which is where I live most of the time. Research is showing us now that when people experience trauma, if it isn't processed through the body, it can be stored in the body. Now, I'm not saying I was traumatized by my inbox. It wasn't that bad. But I will say that trauma is a lot more common than most of us realize. Things that you might not expect to be traumatic can create a trauma response. And it's not always possible to predict who will have a trauma response and who won't. And even if we aren't dealing with trauma and trauma responses, this life is just stressful. Bad news, scary headlines, interpersonal conflict, or just long hours at work can get us out of the present moment and into our heads. And surprising how hard it is to think clearly when you're stuck inside your head. So when this happens to you, when you just can't get back into your body and into the present moment, you can try this technique. Some of you probably already know about it, but for those who don't, it's very simple, and it can help whenever you're feeling overwhelmed. So I invite you to look around, if vision is available to you, and notice 5 things that you can see. Name them in your head. Now you might close your eyes, and if you are able to hear, let yourself become quiet and notice 4 things that you can hear. Next, notice 3 things that you can feel with your hands or your body, objects, textures, sensations. Now notice 2 things that you can smell if you're able. If you can't smell much right now, imagine 2 distinct aromas that are comforting to you. And finally, notice or imagine 1 thing that you can taste. I invite you now to open your eyes, come back into the room, and you can take this noticing meditation with you for the next time you need to get out of your head and back into your body.
give thanks. For this precious day. For all gathered here. And those far away. For this time we share. With love and care. We give thanks. For this precious day. My friends, it is Share the Plate Sunday, our first one of this church year. That means that 50% of everything that goes into our collection plate or that you donate through the QR code with the note Share the Plate will go to a local nonprofit that is doing work that aligns with our values. And the organization that we are working with today is called the Utah Investigative Journalism Project. Yes, exactly. Very important in the current political moment. And if you have not heard about the Utah Investigative Journalism Project, I'm happy to say that Eric Peterson is here to tell us more. Welcome up, Eric.
Good morning. Thanks, everyone, so much for having me. I usually give out my standard disclaimer if you haven't heard me talk before, which is that I'm a writer, not a talker, so just bear with me. But I was also told I only just needed a couple minutes so I could keep it sweet and short. If you're not familiar with the Utah Investigative Journalism Project, we're the only nonprofit newsroom in the state that is dedicated 100% to investigative reporting. That's all we do. We find it's the most important work to do. It's also the most difficult, time-intensive, it's risky legally, but we do it because we think it's important and it's the right thing to do. Especially now. These times are, they are unprecedented, and that is a word that I'm getting really tired of using to describe our times. I spoke here, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, and we had gotten out of an unprecedented election, and then we were in an unprecedented pandemic, and since then we've had another unprecedented election, and here we are now. The worse things get, they still say this the same, and that's because what stays the same is that there's always work to be done for a free and fearless press, and that work is also important, and applies to an active, engaged, informed citizenry. It's a collaboration that is always important, always needed. One of the benefits of speaking twice at this service is I immediately got notes the first time this morning when I walked out the door and someone said, "You need to give them a story." I'm like, okay, I'll do that. Just want to give you guys a better idea why my nonprofit is unique. We actually are very collaborative. We collaborate with local media. We do free trainings for the public and for journalists. And I actually provide all the stories we develop for free to our media partners. We don't sell them. So, a story you might see in the Salt Lake Tribune or the City Weekly or KSL or KUER, it's all provided free. We don't charge for that. But it also gives us a certain amount of independence that's really important. We've written a lot and held some powerful people to account, lawmakers, the governor, different figures like that. One of my proudest stories a few years ago, though, was we gave voice to about a dozen women who had worked at a car dealership in southern Utah where they had faced rampant sexual harassment. And the story took about 6 months to report. It took almost that long, it felt like, to get it published because there was a lot of outlets that were too afraid. They just wouldn't publish it. They thought they were going to get sued. And it was a well-meaning fear because the owner of the car dealership had literally said, "I have an army of lawyers ready to go if you publish this story." Finally had to ended up collaborating with the Salt Lake City Weekly, and my nonprofit paid extra money to promote it online in southern Utah so people would see it. But we got the story out because it was the right thing to do, and because I had told the women that we would get the story out. That is kind of the business that I'm in. And I am just so honored that you're able to kind of support the work that I do, holding the powerful to account and helping the powerless. In the journalism business, we call that comforting the afflicted and afflicting the comfortable. So thank you very much.
I cannot think of a more worthy cause in our current moment than the Utah Investigative Journalism Project. So please give as generously as you are able as the plate goes around, and also please take this time to greet one another as well. For many people that I have spoken to lately, and for myself, things have generally felt off. Between our government continuing to edge into autocracy and the continuing threats of climate change and the horrors of multiple wars and close to home political violence and the fact that there appears to be a mass shooting every 6 hours now, it's been hard for even the most even-headed of us to remain steady and hopeful. We're all destabilized. It's like the ground is moving under our feet, and things we always thought were steadfast are suddenly exposed as not only fragile, but potentially crumbling before our eyes. I'm not sure if I would call it unprecedented at this point, but don't you miss precedented times? I feel like 2012 was very precedented. Is that just me? Is that just a millennial thing? When things feel this unstable, we can feel paralyzed. The most mundane choices might feel impossible to make because we no longer believe that we can reasonably picture the future. After all, walking with confidence requires faith that the ground will be solid under your feet. And right now, it can feel overwhelming to even take a single step. When I was a kid and I would struggle with making choices, my mom would always say, "Do what feels right." But how do we make choices when nothing feels right? There have been many times in my life when things have felt unstable, when any choice seemed almost too weighted to make. I started college just a few weeks after my maternal grandmother had died following a 16-year battle with cancer. She had been my first close family member to pass away in my lifetime, and her death rattled a sense of stability for me in ways that I didn't really understand until years later. At the same time, her death was devastating to my mother, and seeing my rock of a mom in a weakened state was further destabilizing. So from this shaky ground, I left home for the first time for a campus in a whole other town. I'd never lived away from my family before, never even been away from them for more than a few days. And now, this was a whole new world of independence that I couldn't even begin to envision. For the first time, day to day, I was going to have to make all of my own choices. So I got to know my dorm mates, my hallmates, learned the cafeteria schedule, and I started classes. 1 week in, I dropped Italian for Japanese. This was the first choice that had felt right to me in this strange new place. I had studied Japanese as a hobby in high school, but I thought for whatever reason that it wasn't practical to study in college. Not that I thought Italian was practical, but I had Italian heritage, so I was like, I should speak Italian, but I thought it was so boring. So as soon as I walked into my first Japanese class, with all the students wearing their cat ear headphones and Cowboy Bebop t-shirts, it was the time, I knew that I was heading in the right direction. I had started to find my footing. But the following week, I was leaving my 8:30 a.m. Tuesday morning Japanese lecture when I noticed that the halls were eerily quiet. I looked down the hall and there was a classroom with an open door that was packed with students. I walked over and saw a big presentation screen had been pulled down and they were all watching the news. On the screen, the World Trade Center was on fire. I stood in that standing room only classroom watching horrible images on the screen while someone caught me up on what had happened. The planes, the crashes, and no one really knew anything yet. I stayed in that room for over an hour, glued to the screen with a group of strangers. We all gasped as one building, then another, fell to the ground. When I finally walked back to my dorm room, everything was different. If I had started to find my footing at college, the floor was now pulled completely out from under me. There was no stability anywhere I looked. I know there can be sort of a detached narrative around big historical events of the past, right? Especially if we were either very young or if we weren't around when they happened. But 9/11 was truly shocking. Nothing like this had ever happened in America. If you were around back then, do you remember how terrifying that day was? 4 years afterwards, Americans were fearful of similarly large-scale terrorist attacks being carried out again on our soil. It could happen anywhere. Nowhere was safe. Coming from an already destabilized place in my own life, this was a perfect storm for me. Plus, since I was young, I've had obsessive-compulsive tendencies. And I manage them pretty well these days, though if you ask my wife, she might say differently depending on the day. But they do always get worse in times of high stress. And let's just say when I was 19, I didn't have these self-awareness or coping mechanisms that I do now. So OCD is really an anxiety disorder that focuses on control. After all, anxiety is distress at our own lack of ultimate control, right? What could happen despite us doing everything right? So with OCD, the mind often makes up convoluted observances that can provide the illusion of control, or at least a narrative of control, because honestly, the person usually doesn't actually believe the narrative. It's weird. These systems of cause and effect go way beyond magical thinking. For instance, back then, 2001, I started becoming obsessed with the idea that I or my family would die in a horrible terrorist attack, like the people I had seen on TV. Graphic movies of how that could look would just play in my brain and I couldn't stop them. The only way I could feel somewhat okay was to do one of these, they call them compulsions. For me, and annoyingly, it wasn't something like easy textbook or whatever. So like I didn't just have to like check the lock 7 times, which you can just do 7 times and it's done, woo. No, that would make sense if I was worried about like break-ins. But since I was worried about something global and amorphous, my brain had to come up with a different convoluted narrative as to why my choices somehow mattered. So I had learned about the butterfly effect in high school, the theory that everything that happens has far-reaching consequences that we can't possibly imagine. For instance, a butterfly flaps its wings in Kenya, and 2 days later, it rains in Utah for 24 full hours. So my OCD science-schmienced a narrative that every choice I made somehow rippled out into the universe and could have a domino effect on whether me or my family would be in the wrong place at the wrong time. So all I needed to do was make every single right choice, and me and my loved ones would be safe. Cool. So the way this manifested usually was me feeling like I needed to choose the thing that felt right when there were multiple choices. So for instance, which socks do I wear today? I'd stand there at my sock drawer with 2 socks and try to feel which one was right, like live, die. Which one would lead me and my family to a happy and safe place, and which one would lead to us perishing in the most horrific way imaginable? It was stressful. Over the winter of my first year in college, those tendencies exacerbated to the point where they became genuinely disruptive. I didn't want to go out if I didn't have to because I couldn't decide which socks to wear. I'd be late to class because I had to place my feet correctly on all the sidewalks and discern which side of a tree I should walk around so my mom would be safe. Sometimes I'd walk back and do something over and over again until I could tell myself that it felt right. And to be clear, I knew this was banana pants. And that is the scientific term, and I am allowed to say it. With OCD, you know these things don't actually have a causal effect, but then the OCD is like, but what if? Wouldn't you feel stupid? It's more of a self-soothing thing than anything. But finally, I got to the point where I knew something had to change. My grades and my social life were suffering. I couldn't go on with the weight of the world on every choice that I made. So the way I got out of this cycle back then was by rejecting its premise. Basically, when I found myself frozen before a choice that didn't really matter, like which socks to wear, which way to walk around a tree, I would argue with this OCD. I'd say, okay, if this is really how the universe works, if somehow me picking a pair of socks can ripple out and affect whether or not I will be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and somehow I can intuit that, well, that's a dumb universe. And I reject that. I reject my part in it. So I would force myself to do the thing that felt wrong, or just to do something without feeling it out, because I decided I did not want to participate in a universe that was organized in such a silly way that it would give me so much weight to my tiny decisions. And years later, I would learn that psychiatrists call this exposure therapy, and it's often actually recommended to treat OCD. So, And in other words, I accepted that I didn't have much control over big global things, that anything could literally happen at any time, and I ultimately could not guarantee that me or my loved ones would be safe through my actions alone. Now, I'm not saying that I simply overcame these compulsions. I still haven't overcome these tendencies completely. They pop up from time to time, and I have to manage them. It's something I live with. There are times now when I have to remind myself to reject that unhelpful framework of the universe. When I have to accept again and again that there is a lot that my actions don't have much of an impact on. Like if multiple people decide not to turn their cell phones off when they come to church. Or maybe I do influence that. Who knows? But there is a lot that my actions don't have much of an impact on, and that is actually a good thing. When I first started letting myself make choices that didn't matter as if they really didn't matter, it was scary. I was letting go of a narrative that told me that it would somehow keep me safe. At first, I felt like I was flinging myself into the unknown, a new, scary universe where I really felt how vulnerable I and everyone I knew really was. But when I was devoting less time and energy to agonizing over choices that ultimately didn't matter, I was able to start putting more time and energy into choices that did. I formed friendships. I started studying religion, yoga, and poetry. I found lifelong passions that have allowed me to affect the world in what I hope are positive ways, even if they're less ultimate and global than my little narrative of the butterfly effect would like. But the irony is, it's the choices I have made outside of that narrative that probably have had the biggest butterfly effect in the world. For instance, I know my work as a minister, as an artist, as a yoga teacher has affected people positively, sometimes people I've never even met. I know this because people have told me. And if I had remained frozen in fear that anything I did could unwittingly cause harm, none of those positive effects would have happened. There are many times when, even if nothing feels right, we must act. This type of action requires both humility and faith. Humility to recognize that our impact is limited, and faith that whatever happens, we will be able to keep making choices to create the most good we can with what we have. This type of action might need us to leave behind some old narratives, some old frameworks. As we move into this season of ever more instability, I ask us to look at what worldviews, what narratives might we be holding on to that no longer serve us? What frameworks and beliefs might be left over from a time when they may have been helpful, but now only serve to keep us frozen? What stories can we leave behind so that we can act in the future and make our choices out of love and not fear? May it be so.
So this morning, we are holding space for our worries and our fears and our anxieties that we do all carry with us. So often, these heavy feelings live within our mind and our bodies and without real release. But we know when we come to spaces like this and we look around our beloved community, we as a community can hold those anxieties and we can help let them go. So for today's ritual, you'll find in your pews, I'm going to invite you to write a little worry on these strips, little squares of paper. And you're going to come up when you're ready and release them into our bowl of fire. So that's fun. We decided this week, I told everybody when we came up with this, you have fire or water, pick. And we went with fire because it's more fun. And so you'll come up, you'll drop it in. This is your pro tip from first service. Don't hold on to burning paper. Just drop it and leave. Also, because of this, we are asking that adults come up with smaller humans today. They need supervision, and sometimes you do too. So.
Burning things is so satisfying, isn't it? Especially burning things in church. Like, there's a reason with all the candles and there's some magic there. All right, everyone, please rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn, number 1012 in the Teal hymnal. May all beings be well. May all beings be content. May our actions be bonded to our deepest values. May we treat others as we would be treated. May we move through each day with compassion toward ourselves, our friends, and our enemies. May each breath bring us closer to our truest selves and to those we love. Amen. you, David. Freaky. My friends, I hope you will join us for coffee and also stick around for the dedication and the costume swap, preferably both. Wonderful to see you all on this glorious fall day. I hope I will get to say hi to you if you are new. Go forth.